That is just so bad. All right, so a little bit of context and background into myself as well as the intention of this channel. My name is Alex, and I have worked in sports finance for close to a decade at this point, where generally on a day-to-day basis, me and my team were essentially tasked with taking data, taking financial information, rolling it all up, and essentially using that to drive business decisions, using that to drive efficiencies so that we're just operating as an organization, as peak as we possibly can. The funny thing about doing that on a day-to-day basis professionally, I have never taken that skill set and actually applied it to my golf game. I think up to this point in my life, I've very much been kind of a gut instinct kind of feel player, and I've never used data to kind of drive and change what I'm doing on a golf course. So lucky enough, I've got this. Now, to be totally fair, I got an awesome wife, and yes, that is outside of her letting me just take over our garage and turn it into a golf simulator. This thing's not perfect. I think there's certainly a few tweaks and adjustments that I plan on making over the course of the summer. I think we'll probably do a separate video just showing you my current setup and maybe some of the things that I actually want to change this summer. But right now, this thing does two things extremely well. One is it gives me estimated data and feedback and metrics on my golf game that I've just never had before in my life. So if you were to essentially ask me, 3-4 months ago, what my average carry was off the tee, what my spin rate was off the tee, what my ball speed was, club head speed, all kind of maybe the metrics that people talk about in terms of driving, I probably would have told you a number that was overestimated by 10 to 15% on the favorable side. It's kind of interesting now seeing the data and saying that like, hey, that's maybe not the reality of the situation. Maybe a little bit of a gut punch actually to say like, hey, what you may think you're doing off the tee in your head, that's actually not what the numbers are actually showing. Secondly, I have 2 kids under 4. So right now we're essentially at the stage of life where it's very tough to have a 5.5 hour hobby. So on a daily basis, I can get the kids to bed and maybe just come down here and pound balls for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, just work on my game in little increments as I can. So that the few times that I actually do get out on the course this summer, I'm at least playing well. I'm at least feeling like I'm in control of the golf ball and I'm not just out there spraying the ball over the course. There's nothing worse than standing over that golf ball and saying, I have absolutely no clue where this is going. I'd like to avoid that this summer. So this is really kind of a challenge to myself. I have all this data, all these metrics sitting in front of me, and up to this point, I've not really used any of it. I've kind of just been like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Kind of pushed it away and kind of just continued to hit the next shot. I've never compiled the data in the metrics and essentially analyzed it to say like, hey, where's my golf swing inefficient? Where can I actually get better? So the goal of this channel and maybe the intention of this channel is if I were to essentially take what I do on a daily basis and apply it to my golf game, how much better can I actually get? And frankly, how fast can I make it happen? I want to document it all, real reporting, the good, bad, the ugly, not just the things that are working, but certainly the things that frankly aren't working either. I think it's important to document it all. So I have 2 goals that I've kind of set for myself by the end of the summer. One is that I want to carry the ball off the tee 300 yards. And I don't mean hit it 300 yards once and say like, boom, that's awesome. That's great. Let's move on. Let's check that box. I want that to kind of be my new baseline. I would think that right now my average carry off the tee is probably around 255, 260. So I got about 40, 45 yards that I need to get over the course of the summer. And I certainly think it's doable. I don't think it's easy, but I certainly think that it is a challenge that is worth pushing myself and something that I think I can meet. Secondly is, back when I used to play a lot and probably tracked my handicap far closer than I have lately, I want to get back to like a 3 or 4 handicap. So right now I'm probably sitting at about a 12, 13 handicap. I want to use this to, obviously like distance is one thing, but the overall goal is like, hey, how low can you get on the course? Like how well can you play? And I think by using this, not only the data and the metrics on each and every swing, but also using this to kind of help me navigate the golf course a little bit better, how to think about the golf course a little bit better. Not just grip it and rip it. I think all of those can contribute to an overall golf game that is just getting better. So I want to be clear. I have played golf my entire life, but I have never had a golf coach. I have never had a formalized swing coach that has come in and kind of done this stuff with me. So I've kind of done it like many of us have up to this point in my life. I grew up playing the game with my dad. I just watched what he did and tried to emulate it. And so I feel like my swing doesn't necessarily need a big overhaul. I feel like it's in a reasonable spot, but certainly there's some inefficiencies there that I think is going to be interesting to work on. And so, you know, the goal of this channel is I really do want to show that, hey, if you're intentional about using data to kind of change your golf game, you can do it. You know, it's not just one of the nice metrics to have at like a lunch conversation on the golf course. I really think you can take this information and be intentional about how to use it and actually get better. And so I'm kind of looking forward to the journey, and I'm excited to have you guys join me along the way. Okay, so I'm only gonna hit about 5 balls right now. So, you know, I started maybe a week ago tracking every range session that I've had, maybe the last 5-6 days. And so all that data is already sitting in the system. What I'm gonna do right now is take 5 swings at this to kind of just show you the lay of the land, show you where my swing is at, show you just some of the metrics and feedback that we're getting kind of in real time on my current setup. We'll roll it all up with the data that has already been acquired and kind of get together and analyze it. So let me take 5 cracks at it here. Let's see. Let's see. It's close to 10:30. It's the bones aren't necessarily limber right now, but we'll see what we can do here. That was pretty miserable. It's a whopping 222 carry, 4,000 spin rate. Let's consider that kind of an outlier, maybe for the first swing of the night. Do we want to count that as one of the 5? I'm thinking maybe we should, but that's a little bit disheartening. We'll count it. We'll say we're 0 for 1. That is just a terrible swing and a terrible way to kick this off. So let's improve, huh? That's a little better. Little pull, but 253, still spin rate is just not ideal. All right, take 3 more cracks at it. Let's say we're 0 for 2. We're not hitting the ball well here. All right, let's go. Let's at least pipe a couple good ones here. Spin rate's still not ideal. 259 carry. Ball speed's all right, just not. Well, I'll take that. In any round at this point, if I'm hitting 270 in the middle of the fairway, I will certainly take that. So we'll say we're batting 33%. We'd be an all-star right now in the majors. Get that one a little bit better. Still kind of pulled it, but we're sitting at 263, a rollout of close to 280. Once again, that spin was much better. If I could get that a little bit more consistent, I'd certainly take that. Didn't connect on it dead center, but we're close. So we'll call that 2 for 4. Let's see if we can close strong here. It's not the way you like to close. Duck hook into the houses. That's okay. We'll count it. We'll call it good. We'll move on from there. Like I said, we're going to roll these 5 shots into the other shots that I've essentially been tracking over the past week. And let's take a look at the data. Okay, so before we actually get into any of the swing data, I do want to just quickly touch on my second goal this summer, which is related to my handicap. I thought it might be just important just to spend a few quick seconds here explaining what handicap actually is, because I do think that there's many folks out there that just think it's the average score over par. And while that's kind of the case, it's not really necessarily the case, and I think the nuance here actually matters. So your world index handicap is actually measured by calculating your 8 best differentials out of your last 20 rounds. And what I mean by differential is it's the calculation of how well you played relative to the difficulty of the course in which you played. So you can see the calculation here on the left-hand side, actually calculating handicap. And when you look in a scorecard, for example, you're gonna see 2 things. You're gonna see course rating and you're gonna see slope. Course rating is really used to determine what score a scratch golfer would be expected to shoot on that course. And slope rating is really used to determine, how much harder that course is for, a bogey golfer, for example, right? So it measures the relative rise of just difficulty of that course. So when you look at a scorecard and you see a slope of 113, for example, 113 is what is considered the average difficulty of a golf course, while any slope kind of above and beyond 113 means that that course is actually, highly complex, let's say, for just the average golfer. As you can see in this chart in the middle, the gray scores get completely eliminated as part of this calculation. And that's, in my opinion, what makes the handicap system honestly one of the best things about this sport. It not only rewards players for actually scoring well on more difficult and challenging courses, but it also eliminates, those outlier bad rounds that we're all capable of having, and really uses, the calculation to reflect what you're capable of shooting on a good day, not just necessarily what you would go out and typically shoot. The last thing that I want to touch on in regards to handicap here is that, the 2 goals that I've actually set for this summer, in my opinion, they're actually extremely aligned. And what I mean by that is that lowering your handicap is not just eliminating blow-up holes from your round. It's more about giving you more opportunities to make birdie over the course of a round. And one of the most correlated components to burning holes is hitting it further off the tee and putting low irons and wedges in your hand. So now that we've geeked out a little bit on handicap, let's actually dive into the driving data. Now, there's not just one single variable that is going to determine whether you can carry the ball 300 yards or not. It's really a combination of multiple variables that I like to kind of group within 2 different buckets. This first bucket, which we're going to touch on right now, is the speed and power bucket. It's kind of the raw engine that gets put into the golf swing and the output of energy that is actually living in the golf ball. So the metrics we have listed here are club speed, ball speed, and smash factor. Think of it as in, club head speed is the engine. Ball speed is the output of that engine, and smash factor is really the quality of strike at impact. So to be totally fair, all 3 of these are currently falling short of being able to carry the ball 300 yards consistently off the tee. So as you can see, my club speed is actually sitting just under 104 miles per hour right now versus a target of 115 that I need to be at to consistently hit that 300-yard barrier. So just doing very simplistic math on this, if every mile per hour actually equates to 2.5 yards of carry distance off the tee, just making up this 11 mile per hour difference would equate to around 30 yards of carry distance. That's nearly the entire gap that we're currently chasing. Here's, to be fair, this is what I think people actually get wrong about club speed. most folks just think it's about swinging harder and how can I get, that club to swing harder. I don't think my understanding, of the golf swing is, I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's more about sequencing your body correctly. Your lower body fires, your hips, they clear, that torso rotates and that club head releases. When that chain of events actually happens properly, speed just multiplies through the system. Next, we have ball speed, which is, call it really the output of club speed. The faster the club swings, assuming the quality of strike is, the same and consistent, the faster the ball is actually going to be taking off at impact. So right now, my ball speed is averaging just under 154 miles per hour. So we have about a 16 mile per hour gap to actually hit that 300 mark. Lastly, we have smash factor, which is, it's really the ratio of club speed and ball speed. A perfectly struck shot is 1.5 smash factor. Dead center of the face, the feeling that every golfer is chasing when they step up to take a shot. That's what the 1.5 essentially equates to. Right now, I am sitting at around 1.48, which, look, it sounds close to perfect, and honestly, it is pretty decent. But the difference between, 0.02 is more than you might realize. So as I work on getting faster with my sequencing and my club speed, a bad smash factor gets exponentially more expensive. What I mean by that is if my club speed meets, let's say, that 115 mark, that I'm hoping to hit, but I'm not striking the ball with quality, my ball speed may actually not change. It may just stay flat. So I need to ensure that throughout this process that I'm at least maintaining, hopefully even improving this smash factor metric. The second bucket that actually plays a part in carry distance is the efficiency bucket. This is your spin rates and your launch variables. These are the ones that tell you how efficient you're actually being with all that like club and ball energy that we just talked about. So the data I'm tracking right now is spin rate, attack, in launch angle, peak height, and side spin. All of these variables tell me how efficient my golf ball is actually being as it moves down the fairway, right? So the first one we're gonna start with here is spin rate. And honestly, this one caught me a little bit by surprise because if you listen to any golf instructor or read any golf help forums or watch any YouTube videos, you're always gonna hear about spin rate killing distance off the tee. That's because as the ball spins, it catches air and can balloon into the sky, more or less eliminating all that energy that has actually been put into the golf ball. So as someone, myself who's historical, my historical miss is a block fade off the tee, I thought that this was certainly going to be one of my, one of the metrics that I struggled with the most. But honestly, 2,700 spin rate, it's not absolutely horrible. Conventional wisdom tells us that anything over 3,000 RPMs is problematic with a driver, and I'm sitting a few hundred RPMs under that benchmark. So, my ball is still not necessarily efficient at 2,700 RPMs. My goal is certainly to get it down to 2,400, ideally even closer to 2,200, but candidly 2,700, it's not as bad as I was actually expecting. Next, we have both attack angle and launch angle. Both of these metrics actually calculate, what angle the club is hitting the ball and at what angle the ball is actually leaving the club face. My baseline right now is actually pretty strong on attack angle as I'm hitting up on the ball. I would consider this a win and note it as something that I just need to maintain as we kind of work on all things this summer. My launch angle is currently just a tad bit high. I expect that as, my club speed increases, this will naturally adjust. So I am less worried about actively fixing this metric. More so just something I kind of need to keep on in the background and monitor. Now, peak height actually is something that, kind of shocked me when I initially rolled up all this data. Essentially what this is saying is that my ball is reaching an apex of 124 feet, while the optimal range is around 85 to 95 feet. So this means that my ball is actually spending more energy going vertically than it actually is going horizontally. So if I'm able to optimize my launch and spin conditions together, my peak height will just naturally come down and my ball will spend more time, heading down the fairway or in the rough or in some cases, the neighborhood subdivisions instead of just ballooning up in the sky. So this is a real distance, just kind of like hiding within these numbers. The last metric we're going to talk about here is side spin. In short, this is just how much the ball is actually curving left or right in the air. Although my baseline right now is, relatively minimal, delta versus my target here, here's why I actually think it's kind of important. Faster swings will actually amplify whatever face angle errors exist at impact, right? So this essentially means that if my face is slightly open at 104 miles per hour, my curve, it may just be a moderate amount. But as my club speed increases and we get closer to that 115, that face angle error, it just creates a little bit more curvature, and that number could get worse. So this is another thing that I plan on just more or less monitoring as this engine gets a little bit more explosive this summer. So as of right now, my carry distance is sitting at 256 yards. That means that I have a gap of 44 yards that we need to close by the end of the summer. All the variables we just ran through are the components of what will ultimately move this 256 up or down. That's the full picture of where we're actually starting from. So what I have pulled up on the screen right now is a live dashboard that I built to track progress over the course of the summer. So this dashboard, it's live right now. It will be updated after each and every session to just track how we're progressing on all these variables. And, more importantly, just see where we're trending to hit that ultimate goal of 300 yards off the tee. I will post this link in the description of the video. It's going to be listed on all my socials. Please bookmark it and follow along. I think it would be awesome. Next video here, we're going to get into some of the specifics on the plan of attack here over the next few months. And candidly, this is why just tracking data matters so much. My original plan of attack was actually focused on the efficiency bucket and bringing my spin rate down. That's certainly something I do need to work on, but now that I've actually looked at the data and rolled up over 100 drives, the issue's actually clear. I need a higher powered engine. Subscribe and follow along with me.